Welcome, everyone. It's a Thursday night in our world here. Different time zones, I'm guessing. It's yeah, 8 o'clock for me. I'm in Virginia. I live my life according to the seasons. So winter, the coldest, and summer, the hottest. I'm in Virginia. I have my family here, grandkids, so that draws me back. In the spring, mild, and in the fall, mild. In the mild seasons, I live on a farm in Indiana with my partner. Nice history. When I graduated college, St. John's University in Queens, I applied to the Peace Corps and I was accepted to be an English teacher in Ethiopia, Africa. And my partner also was accepted into the Peace Corps. We didn't know each other then, and we really didn't know each other while we served. It was only towards the end. It was a good friendship, and it reconnected about 7 years ago. So that's why the split life. Nobody can keep track of where I am, and thank goodness for Zoom. Now I know where I am. So we'll get started on this. And Zoom has been really wonderful. It's been a great relief to me because I am away from Connecticut and I am away from New York, which has been my hub for 40 years. I mean, 1978, uh, just as a New Yorker, even going into Manhattan to work, meeting Shifu, going up to the Bronx. And then just by good luck, my apartment with my family was just 1 mile from the Chance Center. So, I mean, how fortunate could that be? And so my connection was very strong. My practice, not as strong. So I'm very grateful to Shifu and to all the monastics and to the lay teachers who taught us over the years and really were very patient. That patient just astounds me. So what I'm doing now is simply returning that patience by things that I've learned. And I'm very happy to do it. Uh, in Indiana, I also go to a meditation center, and it's run by 4 lay people, and they rotate every week. Somebody else takes over, and one of the teachers, John, opened up the floor. In the past, they didn't do that. The teacher would just talk, not even ask people, do you have a question? But I think they loosened up a little bit. It used to be strictly Vipassana, Theravada. When they knew that I was a student of Zen, oh no, we don't do Zen here. It was a little bit awkward, in fact. I thought, practice is practice. Why was there a barrier? But it did loosen up over the years. And to the extent where the teachers sort of opened up their talk to the people attending. And John asked, is there anyone here who would like to share what you're going through, anything you'd like to talk it over? And one or two people, a couple of people actually said they just can't grab onto a daily practice. It's very elusive and it's very frustrating. So a number of people raised their hands, made some suggestions, and then it came to my mind, I can speak to that because I think all of us have to motivate ourselves to make sure that what we've learned is consistent and applied. Consistent in our effort and applied in our lives. That it somehow appears and is sort of the foundation of what we say, what we do, what we think, how we interact. It's that very practical element of it that has kept me sustained for really decades. And so I raised my hand and I told these folks, you just can't sit down in your chair or on your cushion and start your method and expect it to go smoothly right away. And the advice I gave, and this was something I had written about even in the Chan magazine, because in Indiana, that weekend before the COVID hit in Indiana, it got a little bit delayed getting to the Midwest versus the East Coast. So I was a guest speaker and I talked about this, how to maintain a daily practice. So I I remembered that, and I simply said again, there has to be stages. There have to be steps we take. And a step can necessarily just be a sentence and a second, or 2 seconds and 5 minutes. It depends on us. So the one thing I said was, and this is what I encourage, is the idea of encouragement. And even if it's just a few minutes, you would have a book, and you would have, or a post-it note, or even an index card, something that spoke to you that you had read. And I understand that we listen to podcasts and we watch videos and YouTube and all of that, but it's fleeting. I have to listen to some things twice, and I have to have a pen nearby. What was he saying? That was really informative, but now it's gone. Whereas with a book, man, I can go back and reread that same sentence. I can underline, I can bookmark it and go back. So the idea of letting encouragement of teachers who have published, who have shared, be our motivation, our encouragement just before sitting. So I do that myself. And of course, the advice is, to forestall watching TV, turning on the news, listening to what's going on, even not even checking your phone if you can bear it. Check to see if there's no family need or, some contact that was important. But really, in the mornings, especially, depending if that's your strong time of day, and it is mine, really, have your coffee, have your tea, drink some water, but spend a few minutes either in a chair away from your cushion and meditation area, and, sort of wake up a little bit slowly, and then let a quote, let some words of our teachers instill some kind of motivation, okay? And it's very important. So what I do is I turn to the Chan magazine often. I also, I taught a beginner's class. Warren and I were involved in a beginner's class last Saturday, and I brought a few books along to show them, what impresses me. And this one is one of my favorite, um, In Love with the World, by Youngjae Mingyur Rinpoche. Okay. And I was so impressed by 3 pages. I made copies, and I keep it right near my meditation cushion. And I read the same pages over and over again because it's very uplifting. He's interacting with a man who comes and talks to him and asks him, "Are you a monk?" "Yes." "Do you meditate?" "Yes." "Can you teach me how to meditate?" And the interaction was very, very powerful and very encouraging. And in the sense of, man was frustrated, and the monk said, "Well, what you're doing is exactly right. What you're going through is what everyone goes through. You'll be fine. You'll be fine." I found those 3 words just so uplifting and so charitable, so compassionate. So in my scatteredness and in my, you know, having to rev up my enthusiasm, I make the vow, but I got to put some punch behind it. You'll be fine were simple words that helped me a very great deal. So now I'm ready to settle down and go to my cushion. Another part of the way that I've approached this is almost like a parent. Here in my daughter's house, they have a wall which measured the growth of the children, from the little to the middle to the higher. And in fact, this past summer, they painted their kitchen, but they refused to paint that one section of wall because all the pen marks, all the pencil marks indicated the way the children got taller. So I sort of reflected on my own growth as a practitioner. And the very beginning stage was listening to Shifu's explanations and his lecture, and then following his advice of meditating. Okay, count the breath. I counted the breath. I didn't have a square cushion at that time. I didn't have a round cushion. So I took cushions, pillows from my bed, and I sat on the floor and I folded my legs and put my towel across. And I did what I was told to do. Very scattered mind, very scattered. The next notch of my growth was going on retreat. And in that way, I saw a bigger picture. In fact, my comment at the end of 7 days was, I saw that it wasn't just meditation, it was a way of living. And the foundation of that way of living was compassion for others and wisdom for ourselves. So by creating that strength of awareness and that strength of experience made the compassion stronger to others. And I was very, very impressed with that. And I remember saying it at the end of 7 days. I was not as frustrated. I saw the bigger picture, but I was still just at that beginning stage. My lines were not climbing quite yet. What changed was taking myself in hand and applying what I've learned on retreat rituals, and not rituals so much as blind following, but the schedule of a retreat, and that is a morning service. Every morning we did, after meditation, we did certain Heart Sutra, the four great vows, Samantabhadra, 10 vows, transferring merit. And so I thought, Heart Sutra, I'll never get that one, not for now. But transferring merit, that had a punch to it. So I incorporated that. Samantabhadra vows, that really spoke to me. And I'd just like to take a break and mention, I did give a talk on that, and it's part of Warren's lineup. And that was a very important talk for me because it's applicable, it's believable. And so those those that we said on retreat, I carried into my everyday life, and that made the practice stronger. Also realizing as time went by, another notch to grow was that I had to become my own teacher. And I think all of us do. I think we know that. This is the sort of practice that you must walk alone. Yeah, not to disparage other religions and all. There's a beautiful scene, and it shows a man sort of praying to God or to Jesus, saying, I noticed that I was walking along and I saw my footsteps in the sand, but then I hit, oh, right, I was walking in the sand next to you, my Lord, and suddenly my life became very, very difficult. And why did you abandon me? Because now I had only one set of footsteps. And Jesus answered, oh, no, it wasn't your footsteps you saw. It was mine. I was carrying you at the time. And that's very, very beautiful. That's a great comfort to know that in our varying religious practices and our varying religious teachers, there's a point in which we can relate and find that comfort and find that encouragement. And so I really did enjoy that, or I was impressed with it when I read it. With the practice of Buddhism, it's a little different. We are essentially on our own so that what we give can be support for others. And certainly the patriarchs and the Buddha himself, they didn't necessarily carry us on the sand, but certainly their teaching carries us, because it is very important that we walk this path sturdy and strong. So uh, so the beginning of my growing was the certainly beginner's meditation class and intermediate. Attending retreats made me grow a little more. and then becoming my own teacher certainly helped me a great deal, but always with the companionship, with the community of my Sangha members, my friends that I've made, my teachers, communities such as this. I explained on that beginner's class last Saturday how um, uh, Ananda, the cousin of the Buddha, questioned, is community half the life of a spiritual practice? And the Buddha saying, no, Ananda, it's the whole of a life. So that idea of community is very, very supportive and very uplifting. So back to that Indiana um, sharing, I explained all this. I said, it can't just be sit on your cushion or sit on your chair. There has to be sort of an intentionality. So read a little bit something. And that very day, when John was speaking to us, he said, stay in the vicinity, stay in the neighborhood, stay in the vicinity of presence. And I thought, well, that's a great expression. And when I told him later that that was one of my encouraging sentences that I say to myself before meditating, he didn't even realize he said it. That's how spontaneous it was for it to come arising out of him. Stay in the vicinity of presence. That's just like Shifu's stay in the present moment. But finding your own words, finding the phrase that really arrows into your heart, very, very important. Um, one of those that I learned was for meditation itself, uh, scattered mind, wandering thoughts. But then one day I read undisciplined mind, and that grabbed my attention. I've always seen myself as a disciplined person, pay my bills on time. I'm never late for appointments, always to work on time. It just on many, many levels. My daughter now relies on me picking up grandkids and all of this. I'm always at the door waiting for them. They even know, oh, grandma's always on time. So I really appreciate myself as being very practical. But when I realized that that scatteredness is really an indication of undisciplined mind, I felt embarrassed. Me to me, nobody judging me, but me being realistic. Maybe I'm not doing as well as I can. So that's another reason I'm saying read. Read how the other teachers are explaining things so that when one thing doesn't quite hit the mark, another thing doesn't quite hit the mark, sometime that phrase, that combination of words really has an impact, and it's a great motivation. And I'm saying a lot of words to explain that, but really it's just one sentence. Stay in the vicinity of presence. Okay, so that's the first thing. It takes maybe 1 minute. 1 minute. The second step, joining your palms and make an intention. You can borrow phrases like the four great vows, right? You can just use your own words. Um, it sets for the right motivation. And Shifu called it vow power, so that we realize we're not just sitting for ourselves, we're expanding all that benefit for the sake of others. And that's really very powerful. Back to retreats, and just to zip to the end, when I saw that the misery of sitting and the leg pain and the clock was so slow, and it was just very, very long and very, very difficult to go through. But at the end, when we transferred the merit, then I saw the punch. Then I saw the real, real reason. And so shift it to the beginning of our practice. Make the vow beforehand, not wait till the end where you transfer, because what you transfer is the power of what you intended. So I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless fixations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. With a wish to free all beings, I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. May all beings be receiving the merits of this sitting. As long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain and dispel the misery of the world. That came from the Dalai Lama. There was a point where Shifu and the Dalai Lama met in New York City, and they had a 2 to 3 day exchange. And that was one of the words that the Dalai Lama said, dispelling the misery of the world. And so that's what I say every morning. It's not arrogance, and it's certainly not a sense of grandeur, but it's certainly the aim. It's the aim. If I can be a tiny portion of that, if we can instill a drop of that, it's a drop of great, great power. It just takes, the idea of a candle can light a room. It doesn't have to be an entire electric grid. A candle can light a room. So as small as we feel we might be, how can my words have much impact? It's amazing, the faith that comes behind that. So I've read before I sit. I sit down on my cushion or on my chair, depending on what you want to do, and I make a vow. Now, guess what? Within minutes, it's gone. The impact of it, the sort of teary-eyed, oh, isn't it lovely feeling is gone. All that settling in is just not settled in. So being aware of that is very important. And sometimes deep breathing helps. Sometimes I do that and I hold my breath a little bit longer so that not panic sets in, but I want to breathe again. And then the breath is, wow, you really feel the breath. I really feel the breath again. And that really focuses the mind. So that 1 nanosecond, it's clear because I want to breathe again. So the breath is the foundation. It's very often used counting the breath, following the breath, because imagine if we can't breathe. That breath is happening all the time, and we're hardly appreciating or paying attention to it, especially for those of us blessed with good health. So I allow 3 breaths. Shifu taught bending forward, pressing in the abdomen. I think it was Gogu who taught this one. So whatever variety works, it really does help. That focusing on the breath before counting the breath or moving to the method is very helpful. So as much as I just mentioned, I really love the kindness of this monk and the way that I was very touched by his interaction with this man who wanted to learn meditation. There was one sentence that grabbed me and made me say to myself, oops. And that's the idea of if you forget your awareness, then you are no longer meditating. So here's the game I play. I could go up to my meditation cushion, right? I could look at the clock and say, okay, 40 minutes, about 40 minutes. And then my legs start to hurt, or I get a sense of I'm done now. And then I think about it and I said, much, much, much of that time was scattered. Now, there's a difference between concentration and awareness. For beginners like we met last Saturday, the idea of concentration is very, very helpful. It's very often compared to a banister on the side of a stair, right? The stairway, that it's a guide and it's a help to keep balanced as one is going downstairs or upstairs. So the idea of counting the breath is a way to keep track of where the mind is. So going 1 to 2 to 3 and so far to 10, so forth to 10, coming back again to 1. You're not going on forever. It's just that 1 to 10 corral, right? Keeping that attention in a very limited space. As soon as we realize we've lost concentration, being aware of it is the magic too. It's not like, oh, I failed, but the if you are not aware of what you're doing, you are not meditating. And so that sentence, as much as he was kind, he did insert that one reality there that is something that I'm now working on more than ever. Again, that idea of my mind is undisciplined embarrasses me. And so it's a motivation to, Shifu might even say, repent. Just be aware of that and say, enough is enough. Game's over. Just encourage myself that way. And so uh, I'm in a Dharma class, right? A Dharma book club, and it meets every other week. And they're based in New York City. It's all the old friends from CMC, and there's a guiding teacher, Mr. Tom Campbell, and he said something last Sunday that just astounded me. And again, it's one of those phrases because as much as I'm saying to you how much I say to myself, I need to be more serious. I need to be more disciplined in my attention, moment to moment. Of course, it slips away. Morning is better than evening, but certainly I have to be, a little more vigilant. And he made a suggestion just a few days ago. When we meditate, we should evaluate every now and again. Reflection, either after we've finished our session or even pausing in the middle of it. Now, for beginners, that might sound like a lot of talking. For those of us who have been meditating for a while now, just to sort of check in with, how does this relate to wisdom? So here I am, seated, and now I'm thinking about the day, and I'm thinking, oh, I have to pick up my grandson at 3 o'clock. Do I need to bring a snack? He likes a snack. What snack should I bring him? So you see what I'm doing? That undisciplined, as much as it's kind. Oh, you're right. What a nice grandma. She's going to make sure she's on time. She's going to make sure she has snacks. Not now, not now, not during the meditation session, rather. Bringing back the mind and realizing, how does this relate to wisdom? It doesn't. It has to relate to conventional life later, but it doesn't have anything to do with right now. So every time I'm finding that I'm going off track and I'm aware of it, the way that helps me to realize, is this really what I want to be doing? How does this relate to wisdom? So again, I'm always on the lookout for that phrase that's very helpful. I was very, very lucky this past summer to attend an 8-day retreat at DDRC. All kinds of friends helped me get there. All kinds of friends helped me get back home. And it was just a blessing experience. Zarko was the teacher. And he made a statement of, and it latched on, I latched on, when you get a thought, be aware of it, but don't go to the second thought. So I have to pick up my grandson at 3 o'clock. Don't go to the second thought of, what's the snack I should bring? I have to pick up my grandson at 3 o'clock. Present. Go back to the breath. Go back to the question. Go back to the method. So those kind of phrases we can reflect as we're in the midst of, very briefly. to get ourselves back on track. And the idea of that scattered mind, that wandering thought, that undisciplined mind, what does that have? What's the relationship? How does that relate to wisdom? It doesn't. So that's a great motivation right there. And that brings me to the idea of reflection. So to repeat, read something for encouragement, make an intention before actually picking up the method, the vow power, meditate, and as meditating, concentrating as well as you can and being aware of what the mind is doing. And if you need to, have that phrase ready that gets you back to how does this relate to wisdom? The first thought comes, don't go to the second thought. All these little tips are very helpful. And these are the tips that I found in your own reading, in your own sharing, in your own sudden understanding, your own teacher teaching you, person to person, you and yourself. It's really amazing when you want to. Okay. It sort of finds you in a way. I'm always very grateful. That's another thing. I'm very grateful to the teachers of the past, present, and future. And I haven't met the future ones yet, but I'm already grateful to them. And these teachings, these sentences are my teachers as well, and our teachers. So it's very wonderful in that regard. Um, excuse me. When Shifu lectured, like the Heart Sutra, Sarangama Sutra, it was way over my head. And one of the two talks that I gave, and Warren will later on explain how to find it, I gave a talk on Samantabhadra, Bodhisattva's 10 vows, as well as another time on the 10 paramitas. And they are common language, common sense encouragements. And I include that as my sitting at the end, my, what is it? My morning meditation. Sorry, my closing, closing event. The morning sitting is ended with a transfer of merit. But I also, on the model of retreats, I just make it more than just metta. I transfer merit and I say these paramitas and I say these samantabhadra vows. They're straight language, they're very much of a boost, and that is also very, very encouraging day by day. Um, a friend of mine was complaining that after so many years, he wasn't getting anywhere. And the one thing I didn't hear in his complaint, or I didn't hear as part of his practice, was seeing how it applied to others, how he was a benefit to others without even knowing it. He thought his practice was very one-sided, and realizing that it isn't gives us a boost. Um, and it's the idea of transferring merit. Um, I think many of you who have practiced with Shifu know this already. And again, this appears, I think we have it somewhere in the lineup of things that Warren has ready to share. Um, I pray for the flourishing of Buddha Dharma, for peace in the world, for the joy and contentment of all people, for the freedom and ease of body and mind. May sentient beings depart from suffering. May our vows be fulfilled. Yeah, so Warren put it up. And I think, as he said, through the GMCNY website, you can download these things in case you haven't been exposed to these particular words. Thank you, Warren. That's wonderful. So read for a minute or two, or half an hour, but read quickly, something to inspire you. Stay within the vicinity of the present moment, right there. Make your vows, how you would like to instill this Dharma power. Meditate, being aware as the mind wanders and being aware of the power of staying with now. The breath is a great companion. Whatever our method is a great companion. Reflecting during meditation or afterwards, but just give that little check-in, especially if it's very wandering thoughts, very, very undisciplined. How does this relate to wisdom? It doesn't. Bring your mind back. And then when it's finished, say any kind of samattabhadra, paramitas, transfer of merit, as you find your heart generates that power. The other wonderful instrument is the metta practice. There's nothing wrong with encouraging yourself in the sense of, may I be safe and may I be healthy, and change the words. Please change the words. May I be sincere. May I demonstrate my gratitude. May I be stronger on the path. Right, these are all the various formulas. They're all the varieties that can be utilized. Create every day a new phrase or two, as long as it stirs your heart. These things need to come from our heart. I like the word sincerity. It's it's a very strange history. Actors in the old days would put wax on their face. It's like makeup in those days. They didn't have makeup, so they used sort of a wax to create color or to create another, you know, disguise to perform for their acting. And sin, the sin, means without. And so sincere means without the wax, without the mask. I think that's pretty cool. That we are as genuine as we can be in this effort of our own guidance, our own evaluation. Can I look at myself in the mirror? Can I look at myself in the eye and measure the sincerity in which I want to step on this path and certainly share it? Um, and the wonderful thing is, it certainly catches it. You know, people say that when I get sad or when I see something very emotional, it catches in my throat. You sort of feel it catching in your throat. With the paramitas, same thing happens. By reciting those every day and by creating your own standards, your body kind of catches. You realize, I don't want to do that anymore, or I want to do more of what's of value, the wholesome. In Buddhism, they don't talk about right or wrong. The terms are wholesome or unwholesome. And I think those phrases sound very healthy, don't they? Wholesome food. I mean, that's generally what we've applied it to, wholesome food and unwholesome food. But it's also a matter of wholesome thoughts versus unwholesome. So that's a guide, and it has a power to it of choice. I prefer this over another. And so with that awareness and with that monitoring every day in the morning and at night, the bookends, Shifu called it the bookends, creates an orb, something that's surrounding us, something that's containing us. And it's all the vows. And an inspiring sentence is, more is happening than we realize. For someone as slow a student as I am, and for as clumsy as I feel I've been, more is happening than we realize is another great encouragement. There's there's an energy that we plug into, like the switchboards of the old fashioned ways, plugging it in and making connections. I think when we align our words and our intentions with the lives and the intentions of the teachers, and certainly the Buddha's example, where we're tapping into something fundamental that's there. It's there, it's there, it's there. And if only we can believe it. I think as we get older, we believe it more because we can't afford not to. In youth, we think we have time. As we get older, we realize we better play the game a little bit better, a little bit accelerated, and a little bit not seeking and grabbing, but certainly using the time as valuable as we can. So that's what I told people in Indiana. And afterwards, a number of them came to me and said, "Can you write that down, please? Could you, outline what you just told us?" And so I did, and, put it out onto some paper and brought it the next week. And some people thanked, and some people, said it was helpful. Where that piece of paper is, and if they followed up, who's to say? I'm not in a position to, chase after them. But it was nice that, you know, the teacher opened to the floor and everybody could help one another with little tidbits. We all guide each other by example, by word, and certainly in instances like this. Warren certainly is the backbone of this particular GMC New York. I it's the meditation center without walls, and it's very, very inspiring. And all the chapters that exist because of Shifu's work throughout the United States and in other parts of the world, his Dharma heirs certainly are very, very instrumental, very encouraging. And we are a beacon too. Our vows make us a very powerful beacon. So I believe that's everything I wanted to say.